I think it's uncontroversial to say that we all love the M series MacBook Pros. I guess more specifically, the power you can get from them for the price you can get them for. But I also think that the MacBook Pro that came right before the switch to M1 is unfairly forgotten. And that is the 2019 Intel i9 16-inch MacBook Pro. And this is actually a huge step forward from Apple. Of course, go over the exact specs in a bit, but this exact configuration would have originally costed you $3,200-ish. I got it for $450, and here it is. This feels really heavy. It's definitely a couple scratches, actually more just like old stickers. There's a little bit of that sticky coating left over. If we open her up for like a 7-year-old used MacBook, it's looking nice. So I'm of course gonna actually try it out and work on it, see where it's forgettable, how it stacks up performance-wise against current MacBooks, and actually where it's still better than M series MacBooks today. But first, will it boot up? Yes. So I got to install my planning app, some creative apps, and for a browser, I'm actually gonna install Opera Neon, who's actually the sponsor of this video. I feel like a lot of AI is just not practical for my workflow, and it gets in my way more than it helps me out. And especially with how fast AI is moving and with new models coming out all the time, it gets overwhelming. But Opera, who's been building browsers for over 30 years now, has Neon, which is their take on a browser in an AI-first world that actually fits into people's workflows. Neon sets to create a space where you can access all of the different AI models all in one place.
Using Neon Chat, you can seamlessly switch between the AI model you want based on the output you want.
There's the 1-minute research agent, which is a powerful tool meant to help researching and helps me get to a starting point with all of the sources I need, cutting down the most time-consuming part of my creation process. With Neon's cards feature, on tasks that AI can help me with, I can use something like their summarized content prompt on online forums, which can gather different opinions users have of a product that I'm making a video on to quickly gain insight from different perspectives. Without getting in the way that I work or me having to go out of my way to access it, Neon helps with the real workflows of mine and isn't just an isolated tool.
Neon also has an active community on Discord where you can interact directly with the product team, directly shaping how Neon evolves.
So Neon is currently $20 a month, and again, that gives you access to all the best AI models all in one place. So be sure to check out Opera Neon with the link in my description. Back when this came out, this exact laptop was close to being the best of the best. Now I currently have an M4 Max, which is today's version of being close to the best of the best. The exact specs of this MacBook is an Intel i9 CPU with an AMD Radeon dedicated GPU. It has 32 gigabytes of RAM and a half a terabyte of SSD. Now you could get up to 64 gigabytes of RAM and also 8 terabytes of storage. Today you can get 128 gigabytes of RAM and the same 8 terabytes of storage. It doesn't actually say what the battery health is now, but it does say it has 206 cycles and the condition is normal. So I guess it's good enough. I'll do some battery testing later, mostly because I'm actually interested to see some of the differences, because what Intel MacBooks really lack that M1 and above laptops don't is optimization. And that's one of the major ingredients on the secret sauce that makes the Apple Silicon MacBooks so good. I mean, with an Intel CPU and an AMD GPU, it's just not the same as having a chip that is specifically made to work with and only with Mac OS. And I'm sure, as we'll see, it makes a pretty big difference. Now, the 720p webcam, just by today's standards, is pretty bad, but this is what the Intel MacBook both looks and sounds like. And this is how the $600 MacBook Neo looks and sounds like. Both will probably pass for a basic video call, but just looking at it now, there are some differences. Now, MacBook speakers have always been pretty good. Here's a quick and dirty speaker test compared to some of the MacBooks I have laying around. I mean, yeah, they all sound good. The issue I have is I have way too many MacBooks now. I need to like resell them or something. Display-wise, it's holding up very well in my opinion. The only thing that's noticeable that's like, oh, this is not quite as good, is the lack of ProMotion. It has 60 hertz, not 120 hertz. I've always thought it's more noticeable on a laptop than a phone. This doesn't have it. Not a big deal. In like a darker room next to some of my other MacBooks, it's worse than the current MacBook Pro. It's just exactly what you would expect. It has 500 nits of brightness, which is still what modern MacBook Airs and Neos have. Modern MacBook Pros gets up to 1,000 nits or 1,600 nits in HDR. But the keyboard, it's great. This is like the classic MacBook Magic keyboard. That actually wasn't the case for MacBooks from 2016 to right before this, but that is something I'm going to get into later when I kind of talk about what made this MacBook such a big step forward for Apple. But trackpads is the same standard trackpad that Apple still uses, and since it is a 16-inch MacBook, it's a massive trackpad. But taking a look at the function keys, or should I say key, because all you get is an escape key and the Touch ID key. That is, of course, because it has the fan favorite or least favorite touch bar. I've never actually used it before. This is my first time, and there's some fun things you can do with it that will especially come up later as well. Now, with newer MacBooks being chunkier or not, they have something that is beautiful, and that is called ports. Ports on this Intel MacBook, or the lack thereof, is one of the biggest pain points, and I don't disagree. You have 4 Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports and 1 headphone jack. At least they didn't take that away. This was placed right in between old MacBook MagSafe and new MacBook MagSafe. So there's unfortunately none of that there. If you wanted to do anything on it, you needed a dongle. It was a dongle world back then, especially because at that time was kind of just when USB-C was becoming the standard. And Apple's dongles in particular were, and still are, quite pricey. Now I know a lot of these specs are kind of boring because everything today is at least a little bit better. That's kind of how tech works, evolving through time. But if you didn't know, back then this MacBook introduced a lot of things that are still kind of the standard today for Apple, and it was kind of game changing. For example, this was the first MacBook to have 8 terabytes as an internal storage option, which is still the norm today. This was also the first ever MacBook Pro to be 16 inches, which again is still offered today. And then back to the keyboard thing, from 2016 to this point, they use something called the butterfly keyboard. I've never owned a MacBook with butterfly keyboard. I tried it once on my friend's MacBook back in high school. It was weird, not necessarily bad for me. The easiest way to explain it is it's like typing on a keyboard with no travel distance on the keys. Some people hated it. I definitely think it's just better the way it is now. But it wasn't just the way it felt that people didn't like. There were also quite a few reliability issues. If a little bit of dust got under there, like the keys were sticking, they weren't registering. So the 2019 MacBook Pro added back the Magic Keyboard, which is a widely loved decision. People also complained about the lack of physical function keys. So they kind of met them halfway here with adding a separate physical escape key. And then there were some issues with like the touch bar lagging out. And you kind of need those functions to adjust your brightness. So they made that more reliable. And as far as MacBooks above 13 inches, this was the last one to ever have the touch bar. So between fixing a lot of complaints, adding new options and features, and with this being the most powerful year of Intel MacBooks to exist, it still does deserve some credit. But based on how much you hear about this today, it was kind of forgotten. I was gonna say unfairly forgotten, but it's actually kind of fair. It all pretty much boils down to the M1. In a lot of ways, the weakest M1 chip in something like the MacBook Air was very close to being just as powerful as this Intel MacBook for a fraction of the price. Like, I really don't think I have to be the one to say this. I think most people know, but the M series of MacBooks legitimately changed the industry. I mean, this i9 MacBook by no means is weak. It's still very capable with things like video editing, photo editing, music production, that category of things. In fact, I'm gonna be editing this whole video on it, so future Carter will pop in later and kind of talk about the experience with that. But even today, this MacBook does do some things better than current Apple Silicon ones. And kind of like why it's forgotten boils down to the fact that it's not an M1 chip. Why it's actually still good boils down to the fact that it's still an Intel chip. For most people, this is backwards since it offers less power for the money compared to Apple Silicon. But because of the fact it lacks Apple Silicon, blows the doors open for a niche selection of people for what you can actually do on this. Maybe the biggest one is, even though you have something like Parallels for Apple Silicon to run Windows on your MacBook, that runs it off of a virtualized machine, so you're not getting like the native performance. On Intel MacBooks, you can run something called Bootcamp, which runs Windows natively on the hardware. I'm not one myself, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe for developers, that's something that could come in handy. This also means if you're a fan of Linux, you can run Linux on this MacBook. You know, maybe before I resell this or throw it in a lake or whatever, I'll man up and try Linux. I don't know where to begin, let me know. What's actually most interesting to me about Intel MacBooks is you can use an eGPU, which, if you don't know what it is, it's an external GPU you could plug into and get more graphics power. I don't know, I just think that's kind of a cool little accessory. But what I'm gathering is a little cooler is the touch bar. After using this MacBook for a day, yeah, the touchpad is so cool to me. Some people loved it, some people hated it, and I don't fully blame them because having physical function keys is nice because there's less room for it to bug out or glitch out or just stop working. But I just can't deny it. There's something about it being a digital screen that just activates my caveman brain. It's just so cool to me. And there's a surprising amount of times that I did find it useful, although not necessary. For example, in something like Final Cut Pro, I found it to be a very engaging way of kind of skimming the timeline and zooming in and out, or even on Opera Neon, opening a tab or switching tabs. Like, it kind of reminds me as like a built-in Creative Console or Stream Deck or one of those types of macro devices. But it just feels so immersive because it's custom and context aware. So if you're in like a music production app, well, you can actually play like the piano directly on the touch bar. If you're in messages or texting or typing, it has like the autocorrect and autofill words. You can switch the sorting options if you're in Finder. You can record your screen and control your music. Like, it's probably my favorite part of this MacBook. And I doubt it's gonna happen, but I think it would be really cool if Apple could take the current function keys and then make them smaller, like on older MacBooks, and then add some sort of variation of the touch bar back above it. That would be the best of both worlds, and that would be a really cool feature to look forward to upgrading into later down the line. Like I said, the touch bar is probably my favorite part of this. What isn't is the battery life. And first off, kind of related to that, fan noise. Yeah, it is a lot worse on Intel MacBooks. That's not much of a surprise. Even when I just had this plugged into a monitor, the fan kicked on. When I was just playing back video in the editing software, the fan was definitely on.
And it's not just loud. When I was editing in bed at night, it got to the point of being uncomfortably hot in my lap. Also, although it was on a charger, half as powerful as the one that's meant to charge this MacBook, while editing and plugged in, the battery was still ticking down, which, even using my M4 Max on the same exact charger, I haven't experienced.
But for battery life, again, with this MacBook being similar in power to like the M1 MacBook Air, the power drain is way worse. To remind you, the battery health on this said it was normal, so this is probably somewhat close to the average battery experience.
With all the batteries on my M4 Max, M1 Air, and i9 MacBook charged to 100%, I ran a 3-hour 4K YouTube video on a matching brightness level, all using the same exact browser, and that drained the M4 Max to 85%, the M1 Air, which has a 96% battery health, to 76%, and unsurprisingly, the i9, the most, down to 41%.
For something like video editing, I tried it yesterday, it was on 94% battery. 40 minutes later, it dropped 70% down to 24% battery. Now, I've complained about how fast my MacBook's battery drains. That's only relative to the other M4 chips. I could get away with doing everything I need to on something like the M4 Pro chip, and it would drain less battery through the process. That was my problem with it. Compared to an Intel chip, the M4 Max's battery is incredible. Now, I do want to talk a bit about performance. Like I mentioned, this whole video has been edited on this MacBook so far. But first, it should be obvious at this point, even my 2012 MacBook can do light, basic tasks and be completely fine. This is no exception, but there were still a few quirks that I noticed. Like if I checked the battery, it said display brightness and notes using significant energy. I have never gotten that before. I didn't even think notes could use significant energy. And when I'm doing something like opening apps or switching windows or clicking on a new tab, something like that, it is noticeably slower and less snappy. Although it's not completely annoying, and by no means is it unusable, but it's just crazy to think about that my M1 Air and MacBook Neo are both smoother and faster than this MacBook in front of me. And they're a whole lot cheaper. If you switch from an Intel i9 MacBook to, I mean, really any Apple Silicon MacBook, there will be a pretty noticeable difference of how snappy, how quick, and how much the battery drains. And then multiply that by a lot if you do anything graphically intensive, like when I was editing this video. Everything just took longer. Now I did record my footage in H.265, which is a little bit harder to process. I've been spoiled by, again, Apple Silicon MacBooks, which can handle it very easily. If you record in H.264, I'm sure it'll be significantly smoother. Like there was a good couple seconds of stuttery playback before it started to smooth out. And most annoyingly, the audio lagged a lot when I was pausing and playing. And again, fan noise, it is pretty bad. It's constant, it's always there. That's the Intel experience. And it's not that my M4 Max doesn't have fan noise, it does, but it's only when I'm rendering. This sounds like it's rendering when I'm just playing back the footage. But what's really most impressive about all of this to me is how much better Apple Silicon is. The lowest end M1 chip plays back footage smoother than this in software.
But for rendering, obviously the M4 Max is going to be the fastest one here. The M1 Air versus the i9 is what I was really interested in though. The chips are a similar power, but the Air has no fan while the i9 does. But what's crazy is the M1 Air was faster rendering this video than the i9.
Now this laptop is not unusable by any means, but I think if you're in the market of buying a laptop and you want to get a MacBook and you don't have any like niche specific needs that require the Intel chip, do not get this. For a cheaper price of about 150 bucks, you can get an M1 MacBook Air used that can do just about everything and more efficiently. And for about $100 to $200 more than this, you can get an M1 Pro MacBook, which is just going to be better at everything intensive. And I think it's actually one of the best bang for the buck deals on laptops at the moment. Now, if you really want the touch bar, which honestly, I don't even blame you, you can get the M1 or M2 13-inch MacBook Pro, which still has the touch bar and are the last generation of MacBooks to have it. And you can get those for around $500 to $600. But to be clear, if you have an Intel MacBook like this one and it does everything you need it to, don't upgrade. As of now, and what I've been running on it this whole video, it still supports the latest version of macOS with Tahoe. It's actually one of, if not the last Intel MacBook to still support the most recent updates, although that's probably going to end after this year. But of course, it'll still receive security updates for years after that. But this laptop fixed a lot of lingering problems for Apple. It was a big step in the right direction, and it was the real last hurrah for the Intel MacBook Pro design. It is a legendary MacBook, but is it unfairly forgotten? I don't know. To me, it seems pretty fair because performance to performance, you can get something that's better across the board with Apple Silicon for cheaper. But it is definitely fun to try out this kind of tech and make videos on it. So thank you for watching. And if you want to see more, feel free to let me know and subscribe for more.